Each step solidifies and magnifies the power greater than myself. That's the whole point of the 12 steps. It's amazing how many normal people you see, and you're like, they could really use the steps. The 12-step program is a process. It's a lifelong process. If you stay long enough to realize that it's a journey and not a destination, you can enjoy the ride.
I'm Dr. Esra Çavuşoğlu, and I've been living a sober life for the past 18 years. My battle with addiction drove me to seek new methods, devices, and supplements to improve my physical and mental performance, enhance my quality of life, and ultimately live healthier for longer. From my experiences in addiction recovery, biohacking, and longevity to the latest global developments, from groundbreaking entrepreneurs to expert academics, the conversations I've had over the years are now featured weekly on Ayık Kafa podcast. As I promised, I will invite not only professionals, but also people who achieved a strong sobriety by using the tools of the 12 Steps program, which is proven, evidence-based, that helped millions of people around the world and for free. My dear friend Kevin is one of them, who has maintained a solid sobriety since 2002, over 22 years, by applying the principles of these steps. My goal with this episode is to influence and educate people around the program. The 12 Steps program is effective in treating addiction due to its comprehensive and supportive approach. It provides a structured path for recovery, incorporating community support through regular group meetings that foster accountability and mutual encouragement. The program also emphasizes spiritual growth, self-reflection, and making amends, allowing individuals to address both the psychological and behavioral aspects of addiction. Together, these elements help participants not only achieve sobriety, but also improve their overall quality of life. The 12 steps are a set of guiding principles in addiction treatment that outlined a course of addiction for tackling problems including alcoholism, drug addiction, and compulsion. They were originally proposed by Alcoholics Anonymous as a method to overcome alcoholism. These steps are essential in many other self-help and addiction recovery groups beyond just AA, adapted to address a wide variety of substance and behavioral dependencies. Here is something that is fascinating. A huge amount of people who watch this channel frequently are not subscribed. So I want to ask you a quick favor. When you subscribe, it helps us to make the show better, access to the world-leading experts, and ultimately bring you more value. All that I ask is for you to hit the subscribe button, and in return, I promise we will make Ayık Kafa better every day. Kevin, welcome.
Thank you.
As you know, the podcast name is Ayık Kafa, means sober head, and that is showing the enlightenment that I had after getting sober. And my purpose of doing this podcast is not only giving hope to people about sobriety, also sharing my own struggle, but also being able to show them that not only there is a solution in addiction and recovery, but also in all the other disease lifestyles that people are suffering and they're not able to reach usable tools to make their life better. Everything started when I get sober. I promised my audience that I will come to a point that not only I will interview experts such as doctors or therapists or founders or some sort of supplement company, whatnot, but also people who achieved in their, whether sobriety or longevity, whatever they're applying in their life, and they're successful, happy, thriving people. So you're one of them, and I'm very, very lucky because I know you now that you reminded me even before I got sober. I tried to get sober back then, but you knew me from then. Here we are now sitting across each other, and I want to speak about the 12-step program. I don't want to focus on just one group such as AA. It can be NA, it can be CA, it can be Eating Anonymous. There's so many different groups that all use the same ideology, which is the 12-step program. Mm-hmm. So let's start with that. What is 12-step?
The 12 steps, for me, represent a process which enabled me to become the person that I've always was meant to be. Drugs, alcohol had taken me away from that. I thought they were my higher power. I had a belief that I could do anything by using them. So getting back to the 12 steps showed me the delusions were created by the use of drugs and alcohol. It allowed me to see how these delusions had affected me and kept me in this way of life that was killing me. So it showed me a way out. It showed me how to be that person.
Yeah, you got sober in America, correct?
I did get sober in America.
And how long now you're sober for?
May 10th, 2002.
22 years.
22 years. Actually, this year in May, I have been clean and sober now as long as I had used.
Okay. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
I've reached the break-even point.
Yeah, I know. Do you count like from the birth or from the start of the use?
From the start of using.
I had these goals and I passed that goal far more. So that's a really amazing feeling. So Kevin, we're in Turkey and I know that you are an important person in the meetings. And we often speak about, like, I have a client, I want to send it to the meeting, whatnot. Before we started recording, we discuss about the lack of understanding among people, might be families, might be doctors, might be therapists, might be psychiatrists, so all kind of doctors. The lack of understanding, their lack of understanding about how the program can keep people sober. Therefore, I don't see any interest from them to support their loved ones, clients, whatever you call them, to encourage them to go to the meetings. The reason I know that, because since I moved back, I have fair amount of clients who came sometimes just for one session to understand where they are at. Some others stays with me for a long time. And there's one very important rule that I have. You guys have to go to the meetings, otherwise I cannot help you. And the response that I receive is that, oh, well, we heard about the meetings vaguely from this doctor, but nobody forced us. And when they start going, the ones who are regularly joining to the meetings, they found what you found and what I found: a unity, a place that they can feel supported, a place that they can be themselves. Being a foreigner who lived here for a long time, where do you see this difference? Why it's happening? What's different in America? What's going on here?
It's a good question. I think there's a lot to it. We live in a world today where everything is instant gratification. Everything. When they do come to AA or NA or whatever, they expect instant gratification. Yeah, well, I went to a couple meetings. I'm good now. Mm-hmm. The 12-step program is a process. It's a lifelong process. It's not a destination. It's a journey. If you stay long enough to realize that it's a journey and not a destination, you can enjoy the ride. Mm-hmm. Recently, been working with some guys, one guy in particular, very clever guy, master's degrees. We went through the first 10 steps. He sent me a message all angry and he said, this stuff doesn't work in Turkish society with the Turkish culture and the Turkish families. And he stopped coming. So I send him a message. I miss you, brother. Where are you? He said, I'll meet with you, but I'm not coming to the meetings. I thought, this is the Turkish thing. I don't know what's going on with this family. Mm-hmm. But it came to the amends process and stuff. And I think one of the biggest things is that we expect other people to change when only we can change, right? I can only change me. I can't change other people. That's frustrating in Turkey, I think, for Turkish people. I think it's frustrating for all people.
Sure.
I'm doing well. Like, it's kind of like I deserve a medal. I did all these things now, right? I'm good. But wait a minute, you're still the same. Recovery is not an easy process when it comes to this realization that I can only change me. I can't change anyone around me. But it's worth it. or else I wouldn't be sober. I wouldn't be clean.
So this program, as you and I know, it's probably in every country in the world. Maybe there are handful of countries that, I don't know, they're not using the programs, but in most countries they are. And somehow people get adjusted. In Turkey, I don't think that it's the Turkish thing. I think maybe it's the person's mindset, I would think. Or maybe, let's put it this way. It might be Turkey because they don't have big enough support group and a doctor and a therapist that all are speaking the same language. Because I do have clients like that. And they want to be appreciated just because they're sober for 3 months. But because of my own journey, and I learned the tough way and the hard way, then I just say, you know what? Wait, because it's normal your wife is frustrated with you because finally you're at a place that she can share what a disaster of a marriage the last 10 years was. So it's not going to change in 3 months. Or to another one thinking that their parents is a burden. Oh, well, you were a burden for like almost 20 years drinking and you don't see from their angle. So I think that might be the difference in the Turkish culture because of the professionals not knowing what exactly to expect. People probably would be wondering, what are these steps? So I let you go through the steps.
Okay.
Do you know by heart or do you read the book?
Well, the first step is just I admitted that I had a problem with alcohol and that my life had become unmanageable. The first step is the most important one. I have a disease. I like to call it dis-ease.
Dis-ease. Okay.
I have a dis-ease with life, and the drugs and the alcohol obliviated all of that dis-ease. So my problem really wasn't the drugs and the alcohol. My problem was this dis-ease with life and living life on life's terms. The step one was realizing that, first of all, because of using and drinking, I crossed the line somewhere. Now I have a default mode way of thinking, like a switch in my brain, that whenever there's some conflict or celebration or anything, the thing to do is to drink and use. But the thing, once I think I can have a beer or I can have a drink or I can have a toke of some weed or something, once I do that, I have no idea what's going to happen because my brain, what that switch does is it tells me that I need more. Mm-hmm. More is better. If a little bit is good, more is better. So I don't know when or how I'm going to stop. Usually I black out, pass out, run out of money, or I end up in handcuffs. That's how I stop. And it sounds pretty crazy to think, why would you even start? Right? But that is the problem. My problem was not stopping. I could always stop one of those ways. My problem was that I couldn't stop starting, no matter how many promises I made to people that loved me or to employers or to whatever, I just couldn't stop starting. A friend would call me and I'd say, no, I'm going to meetings and I'm not doing that stuff anymore. And I'd hang up the phone, because they'd invite me to a party or something. And I'd hang up the phone, and my dis-ease is I have a mental condition. That's how I described the first step. The hardest part of the first step is accepting that I have a mental issue. And that mental issue is that when I hang up that phone, telling that person that I don't do that anymore, immediately a committee forms in my head. And that committee tells me, it starts rationalizing and justifying, well, it wasn't so bad, maybe I was a little premature in coming to the program. Look, other people drink normally, if I just drink a beer, maybe I'll be fine. It's a million different excuses to why it's a good idea to call my friend back and say, I'm on my way. That's my obsession of the mind. I always tell new sponsees, it's a lie. The mental condition that I have is my brain lies to me, and I believe it. So it sounds crazy, and it is crazy. That is the dis-ease of alcoholism and drug addiction. I believe the lie. When we talk about the first step in powerlessness, that's where I'm powerless. I am powerless over the lie in my head. What do I do? What do I do? How do I fix that? No one's ever been able to tell me how to fix that. Even coming to the program, oh, you have to find a higher power. I don't know how to find a higher power. I came to the programs for a long, long time, in and out, in and out, in and out, looking, trying to find this high. I couldn't find it because therein lied the power. You know, I got a sponsor this time, and he said to me some very interesting things, some things that nobody had ever told me before. He told me, Kevin, you don't need to find a higher power. You don't need to find God. I said, what? What are you talking about? He said, Kevin, all you have to do is open your mind to the possibility that there is one, and God will reveal himself to you as you work these steps. And that's exactly what happened. Even to this day, 22 years later, it's unbelievable. It's hard to describe that, how it happened, but that's exactly what happened. He also told me another thing that nobody had ever told me. He asked me, Kevin, what's your concept of a God? Like, I don't believe in God. But if there is one, it's this. And all stuff to do with religion. Mm-hmm. And he said, well, it sounds like you have God in a box. And if you have God in a box, that makes you bigger than God. And I had to think about that for a minute. And I thought, how we compartmentalize everything in our lives. And he said, do you believe I have a God? I said, yeah, I do. And all your sponsees too. He said, well, you know, my God doesn't have a name. It's just all loving, all caring, all the time. He said, you can borrow my God if you want to. Because he said to me, he said, Kevin, if that's what your God is and your God's not working for you, then you need to get a new one. That concept also was new to me. It was like, that makes sense. But I mean, can you do that? I had to ask him, can you do that?
Your religion and my religion are different, which I believed in God, but I didn't think about God at all because it was a punishing God. Muslim faith has the belief, at least what it is taught to us, in a way that, you know, it's a sin, you're going to be punished, there's a hell, whatever. Because we're in a secular country, at least on my time, we didn't have so much God talk around. But it was very different when I realized that with the steps, when I came to America, that, you know, this whole concept is a forgiving God. If you don't want to call it God, call your sponsor a higher power, call an attorney a higher power. So the simplification of just follow people's guidance, who knows better than you in any case. Like if you don't know how to cook, whomever cooks knows better than you. Your sponsor knows better than you. The school knows better than you. In a weird way, they make you embrace the concept of, oh, there's someone who knows better than you, but they're not going to punish you. They're going to just guide you. Made it easier to come into this understanding of God for me.
I think our gods are all the same. Mm-hmm. I can tell you a story. You want to hear a story?
Sure.
One day, this Turkish girl came to me, crying her eyes out. Kevin, please help me. And this was not a program person. This was a student. I said, how can I help you? She said, I don't want to be a Muslim anymore. I'm like, how can I help you? She said, I want you to take me over to St. Antoine's on Istiklal Street and help me talk to those people. I'm like, I don't think that's a very good idea. Your parents will kill me. They'll kill you. They'll kill you too. I said, please, I think you should think twice about that. I don't think it's a good idea. Crying. Please, Kevin, just help me talk to them. I said, all right, I'll help you talk to them. That's it. So we go to the ferry boat to cross the Bosphorus. And all the way over, I'm thinking, oh, I had some fixed ideas about religion. Mm-hmm. And I thought, you know, we're going to go there and priest or whatever is going to say, oh, you don't want to be a Muslim? Yes, you have to come and be a Christian. and like grab her and come, yes, come. That's what I really thought was going to happen. So I didn't think it was a good idea. And we get there, and I rang the doorbell, and this really old priest came to the door. Yes, how can I help you? And she immediately starts crying. And I said, well, my friend here wanted to talk to you. She said that she didn't want to be a Muslim anymore. Maybe you could help her. He did the most amazing thing in my life. I never seen. It was one of the most spiritual things I've seen in my life. And he put his hand on her shoulder and he said, my child, he said, there are many roads all leading to the same place. It doesn't matter which road you're on, as long as you're on the road. And I was like, my mouth fell open. I was like, did he really just say that? She immediately stopped crying and said, thank you so much. And she said, come on, Kevin, let's go. And she stayed a Muslim.
I don't remember the whole story, but I was somewhere not too long ago, and there was a conversation about like God, whatever, and some probably Turkish person or some person who believes in the faith of Islam, they say like, we don't call God, we call it Allah. And I'm like thinking in my head, I mean, they're the same thing. It's just the language translation. I mean, so yeah, when you're fixated on one word or one path or one understanding of God, it's very difficult to accept that there's a bigger and a higher thing. That's why probably in the big book, they try to call it more like the spirituality rather than the religion, because then everybody can join the ride. So can we just then continue? Because, you explained very well the first step, but people are going to wonder what are the rest.
Well, I told you this for a reason, this story, because it directly reflected on me. It wasn't about what that girl learned from him, but I learned, so those delusional ideas in my head, right? So all the way over there, I had this delusion of what was going to happen. Mm-hmm. And because of that, I realized, first of all, I was wrong. I was wrong about what was going to happen. I realized I was on my own path. I was on my own road. Mm-hmm. And it had nothing to do with any religion or anything. I only learned this by helping her. Mm-hmm. That's a cornerstone of this program. Helping others. By helping others, I learn. That's why that story is so important.
Very important.
In step one, I said I'm powerless. So now I have opened my mind to the possibility of there being a higher power that's all loving, all caring, all the time. That brings me to the step two. Came to believe that a power greater than myself could, the key word there is could, restore me to sanity, which means I came into the program insane, delusional, mm-hmm. which that was another example, right? That I just got done explaining. I had ideas in my head that were not in tune with reality. I saw my sponsor, all the people he was working with, happy, joyous, and free, and they all had a higher power. The one thing that was missing in all the other people who were in the program and going and coming and going and coming. And I thought, okay, I'll open my mind up to this. And that's all is required to step two. If there's a power that's working for them, then maybe this power can work for me too. That's step two. Maybe it could, if I let it. Which brings me to step three, which is we made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as I understand him.
I want to jump in here because many people wonder also my thoughts. And exactly like that, my journey in the rehab, the reason it was so easy, most people really don't want to stay more than a month. I was there 4.5 months, but that was the key turning point when I turned my will and power over to God. It was a very interesting moment. Like you were explaining about your sponsor, his sponsees, in the rehab, Father Bill, as you know, and so many other people giving the message, ask for help, turn it over to God. And, keep hearing these. It seems like somehow it gets in your subconscious. And one day they took me to the extended care. They say, like, this is the place. They wanted me to go there. I highly qualified for that unit. When I saw the place, it was like compared to the main campus, it was like an old building. There was this woman knitting. I'm like, I don't belong here. Obviously, when you were saying the insanity, all these crazy thoughts, and me believing that, oh, I'm better than everyone else. Then I caught myself saying that, oh my God, I'm focusing to so many other things than my healing process here. That was that night, Kevin, with the fear, because, they say, throw your cigarette packet under the bed if you cannot bend on your knee. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm Muslim. I need to bend myself on my knee now. I'm like, so many thoughts. But that very moment, that was the night I said, God, help me to make a decision. I don't know how I did. I know that there was a channel probably to the sky that opened me and God, the relationship. I swear to God, in that morning, the morning after, I woke up and I was light as a feather. I went to the therapist, the counselor. I said, I'm staying. And therefore, I hear you. That was like me trusting God. And then after that, this whole journey of 18 years was so smooth, even though there was a lot of difficulties, but it was smooth, like you said, because I was like, I'll do my best, then turn over to God. If it's not happening, it's supposed to not happen. So I hear you very much. And people who can really internalize that, their recovery journey is so much easier.
It certainly is. I mean, it's accepting whatever comes your way. Yeah. Surrender and acceptance, right? I have to surrender these ideas. Mm-hmm. All right, let's try this. Mm-hmm. I was so embarrassed. Step 3. My experience with step 3. My sponsor had me meet him at a Denny's restaurant in America. And we're sitting at the Denny's restaurant table, and it's very crowded. All the booths were filled. And so we talked about step 3. He said, are you ready for the 3rd step prayer? I said, okay. And he put his hands on the table in the middle of this restaurant. And I'm like looking at his hands, like, and the people sitting around. And I'm like, what? He said, come on, let's do the 3rd step prayer. And I'm like, right here? Like, out loud in front of everybody? He's like, yeah, of course. He had no problem with it, right? But I'm like so worried about what other people are going to think about me, who's going to see me doing this, blah, 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 blah. Just crazy stuff in my head. But I was like, you know what? All right, come on. And I grabbed his hands, and we did the 3rd step in the middle of this busy restaurant. And you know what? No one cared. After we were finished, I'm like, everyone just was gone on with their stuff. Everybody's so looking at me, so concerned about nobody cares. Nobody cares what I'm doing. It stops me from doing the things that I should do. It's funny. I went ahead and did that, and I realized that the humbling part of step 3 was awesome.
Mm-hmm. So, we all believe that, the first 3 steps are the most important because, I have a problem. I can't help myself. I need help. So that's the most important, like you said. But the rest of it also is as important, how I speak with my clients as well. It's because then slowly, it starts putting brakes. It's teaching you how to push the brake pedal when you're driving. Why do you think it's important, the 4th and the 5th step, which you have to also share? What are they?
Oh,
we don't need to explain too long, just because we're trying to help people to understand what are these and why they're needed.
Okay. It's actually not that complicated. Everyone dreads the 4th step, but the way I was taught to do the fourth step was very simple.
And what it is, first say that, what is the fourth step?
The fourth step is making a moral inventory.
And that would be things that happened to you and things that you caused, correct? In a way?
Well, there's resentments. All the people that I have resentments against. There's a resentment list, there's a sex list, and there's a fear list, and there's a who I harmed. One of the biggest things about the fourth step that people have problems with is thinking about it too much. Thinking is my problem. So the way I was taught to do this is to work down the columns. There's columns like who, blah, 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 mom, dad, government, God, blah, 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 blah. Second column, like what happened? Why are you resentful? Blah, 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 blah. And the third column, how did it affect me? Like my self-esteem. So instead of going across the paper for each person and thinking about the whole scenario at one time, I was told not to do that. I was told just list the people, then go to the second column, then go to the third column. Because it's not about thinking, it's just getting it down on paper, and then we'll talk about it. Then we'll see your patterns after you've written it. And it shouldn't take you long to write it because you've got all that in the front of your head. If it's not in the front of your head, then it probably doesn't even belong on the paper. If you remember something later, you're going to have the tools later to take care of that.
And that is kind of like taking the poison out of you, yeah? That's a confession, almost venting it all out so that you don't have anything stuck in you in a way.
Well, yeah, that's a good way of putting it. The way I describe it is this higher power, this God of my understanding, and the big book talks about it. We find it deep within us. It's always been there. But over the years, all the crazy things that have happened, like arguments or abuse or drugs or alcohol, I buried my God underneath so much crap that I didn't even realize it existed anymore. It's always been there. You know, when you think about, there's always been something looking out for me. The way I kind of view my higher power is higher self. To be in touch with my higher self, because I definitely believe there's a lower self. You know, alcohol is called a spirit. Another word for alcohol is spirit. And that spirit is directly in touch with lower self. It brings out the worst in me. It magnifies all my negative character traits. And the fourth step, what it did is it uncovered. It uncovered this God within me and let it shine through and let me see that, you know, I'm not a bad person. There's an expression I'm sure you're fully aware of. I always believed that I was a good person, but I couldn't carry through with, I always wanted to do the right things, but I couldn't do it because of the drugs and the alcohol. I'd say something, but I couldn't do what I said. You know, I couldn't understand what the problem was. And the problem was, so I was judging me by my intentions, while the rest of the world was judging me by my actions. And I couldn't understand what was wrong with the world. Don't they know that I'm a good person?
But what you're saying is like what you thought about yourself and your actions that people were watching were not matching each other.
Yeah, my words and my actions didn't match.
So basically, step 4 was to kind of show to your own self, actually, your actions.
It showed to me what the drugs, the alcohol, my real actions, how it affected me and how reliance upon self, this is where the reliance upon self failed me. Time and time again, that I needed in my life this power greater than myself. And once I uncovered all this, it just fortified the step 3, made it more solid, which each step does. Each step solidifies and magnifies the power greater than myself. That's the whole point of 12 steps. So I go from a belief to a faith.
So what's the purpose of the 5th step then?
The 5th step, is I can write that all down, but I need somebody to look at it and help point out my patterns. Where did things start? How did they progress? Where's God in the picture in all of this? So if I put God into the picture in these scenarios, what would be different?
I have to ask you something, because I know that you're a very strong believer in God, but there are so many people in the program that they still don't. They're long-term sobers. They're having a very honest life, but they don't want to call it God. So how do you help these people if they're not believing the way that you believe in God?
They believe that there isn't, right?
Let's not say there isn't, but not involving it the way that you are.
It doesn't really matter what you call it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just, like you said earlier, words,
Mm-hmm.
right?
So we can call then where is honesty in this? Where is trust in this? Where is love in this? So you can approach, when you look to the list, you don't need to say God, but everything symbolizing God, actually, a higher self, a higher power.
Yeah, you could say that.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
When people ask me what's my style of doing therapy, I use more steps than things that I learned at school. Because, I mean, it's no-brainer when you work with someone who is very early in sobriety and all their behaviors that they've been doing, let's say, for the last 10 years. It's just like we're saying, like someone needs to show you, hey, look, from here you went there, then this, then to this. But in this process, actually, the 6 steps were much more profound for me, because the big things we know. When it comes to the small things that we are like, the shortcomings, character defects, all these things that we're saying. So how do you feel about them? Well, let's explain what's the 6th and 7th step.
Well, the 6th step is just a decision.
Mm-hmm.
Turn these things over to God.
Mm-hmm.
Again, like step 3,
Mm-hmm.
it's just a decision. When I look at my 5th step, it's like these defects of character, these things, ways of acting out on things. Do I want to continue living my life like that?
Mm-hmm.
And if the answer, of course I don't. That's why I'm here. I'm here to get better. I don't want to live like that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like, okay, to make the decision, please take it all.
Mm-hmm.
5, 6, 7 are the together steps.
Mm-hmm.
We do them together.
Mm-hmm.
With the exception of 1 hour. When I did my 5th step with my sponsor, after we were finished, I had 1 hour to reflect on, was I thorough? Did I say everything that I needed to say? Is there anything that I'm holding back? The deep, dark secret in the closet. Usually most people hold something back.
Sure.
So that's in that hour, it's like, you got to get right with yourself. It's like, well, there is this one thing. Right? And then proceed with the 6th to make the decision. I'm ready to move on.
Mm-hmm.
I'm ready to move on and now invite, again, this higher power to do with me as the higher power wants, which I believe is in a loving, caring way. So it's kind of like changing your thought patterns, internalizing more. Again, the 3rd, all the steps before, the internalization of going from a belief to a faith.
Mm-hmm. And action, maybe?
Absolutely. It's all about action.
Mm-hmm. How do you see it changes people's life? Not your life, because you have many sponsors, I'm sure, all these years. You watch people, even though they're not your sponsor. What happened to their life that you witness when they are fully committed, not only to God, but to the steps, to the fellowship, to the program, to sobriety?
I think the courts have a really good way of putting it. You become a productive member of society.
I like to hear that, because when I saw the steps myself and the program, I just was like, okay, this is spiritual movement of the 20th century.
Absolutely.
Because it's kind of merging all the humanistic to be a good person, honest person, a productive person, a respectful person. So to make you a fool and to be proud of yourself, other people would be proud of you. So that's how I saw when I really realized what the book is about. Like you said, the judge says that we are now the productive person of the society.
Yeah, that being the case, after doing step 7, my personal experience was I didn't feel anything. So 5, 6, 7, I didn't feel anything. I felt like empty.
What do you mean by that?
I didn't have any...
Empty in a good way? Light?
Well, it took me a couple days to understand. For like 3 days, I was just like, I felt after doing 6 and 7, it was like, I felt empty. I didn't know what to think of it. And then after 3 days, it dawned on me, I don't feel anything. There's no more shame, guilt, remorse.
That's what I thought.
I'm not carrying this rocks, million-pound rocks around anymore. I was light, like you said earlier. I was light. And I had a white page. My sponsor explained it to me. I have a white page now. Okay, I can go back to living those character defects, or I have this white page now. It's gone. What do you want to put on here now, Kevin?
Actually, the one more thing I want to add to that, the way that they really help you to go through them, at least my experience, and help you to internalize in a way that, okay, what happened, happened. But if you don't pick a drink or a drug, you never need to go back to these. So that was like, that's really good. So all I need to do is to stay sober in order not to live all these disasters that happen.
But I really felt now I had the power to be the person that I always wanted to be. So then it was on to step 8 and 9, making the list of people. This was like the only step that I procrastinated on. I was so worried. I still had fear. Even after going through asking God to take all, I didn't realize it at the time. I procrastinated a bit because I was a little worried about having to make amends.
Don't you see many people trying to do these amends just at the beginning, like suddenly they decide because they have an idea?
Everyone tries to do that. That was one of the things my sponsor told me very early on. Kevin, no amends until we get to that step.
So 8 is the list and 9 is the action, correct? So you make the list of people that you harmed.
Yeah.
And then 9, if it's okay, if it's proper, because you may even make things worse if you go to someone like, hey, my dear friend, my best friend, I slept with your wife, wouldn't be a smarter thing to do.
Yeah, like old girlfriends, things like that are generally not a good thing. However, the amends process was action. Taking that action. It's like going out there, everything's really safe inside the rooms, right? Out of the rooms, and you have to start dealing with the world.
But we should also clarify that, people also do that, I don't want to say mistake, but when they do their amends, they want the other person to forgive them, which actually may not be the case.
That's true. It has nothing to do with the other person forgiving you. It just has to do with you cleaning up your side of the street. I had apologized to people so many times that they didn't believe my words anymore. So that's why my sponsor specifically told me, do not make amends. He said, Kevin, you have to show them. You have to let your actions speak louder than your words. And so that's what I did. So when it came time to make amends to like family members and stuff like that, they actually saw the difference, the change in me. And when I went to my father, it was like, I'm not saying sorry. It's not about sorry. It's like, listen, I've done this. And I'm sure that you could add a million things to that list. And I'm just here because I want to know how I can make it right. And that's for each amend. How can I make it right? What can I do for you today to make it right, if that's possible?
Mm-hmm.
And then you do what they say. My father, he said, I want you to get up on the roof and clean out the rain gutters. I'm like, are you serious? He's like, yeah. I'm like, all right.
Yep. I really like 10th step as well. The way that I got used to it when we were at the rehab, that's a funny story though. I have to say this. So every night they make us fill out that form, the 10th step.
Uh-huh.
That's the inventory, daily inventory. So, how was your day? What did you feel? Yada, yada. Did you do any relapse behaviors today? And I'm like, this is going to connect back to the step 7, actually. I'm like, are they crazy? Like I'm in a rehab, what type of relapse behavior I would show? One day, I was 3 weeks in. I'm like, and we're going to the meeting, AA meeting on the women's extended care. So there's a path that you walk, obviously non-smoking, and I'm smoking on that path. One day, returning to the unit, I'm like, oh my God. So turn to my friend Jennifer. Jennifer, would this considered as a relapse behavior? And that dawned on me that actually these small things that we don't pay attention, we underestimate, we think we're smart, clever, tricky, whatever. So that was like the epiphany on my whole stay. I'm like, oh my God. So after that, actually, I really understood the 7th step, because it was more like, okay, you pass on the yellow on the traffic light, not a good idea. If you do 3 times, the 4th time, your brain starts going back the way you lived. So I ask my clients also to fill out these forms. I found it from Karen, because it helps them to analyze their day and being able to put on a paper their feelings. If they're frustrated, they have a way of thinking, okay, relapse behavior is not just picking up the glass or going to a bar, but can be bazillion things. So it's really a powerful step, in my opinion. And in a good step, actually, it makes you feel good.
The 10th, I live in 10, 11, 12. I've done the steps once.
Me too.
And I lived 10, 11, 12. That's what I was taught. If I'm practicing 10, 11, 12 every day, there's no need to do a 4th step ever again.
Sure. So let's say, what's the 10th, the 11th, and the 12th?
Taking a daily inventory, and if I've harmed someone, to make immediate amends. So the 10th step is actually in the big book. It doesn't say it, but there's a 4 and 4 list.
What's that?
Do you know the 4 and 4?
No, I don't.
There's the 4 problems and the 4 solutions. So the steps, all of the steps are about living in the solution instead of the problem. Same for meetings. I was told that I'm not allowed to share my problems in meetings without sharing a solution, or else I'm just dumping my trash in the meeting like it's a garbage dump. If I have a problem, talk to my sponsor, talk to sponsees, sponsee brothers and sisters, talk to someone, and then once you have your solution, then you share it and tell everyone what you did. So in the 10th step, the 4 problems: selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. Those are the 4 problems that come up in my life regularly: selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. And I make my sponsees memorize it. They have to memorize it. Selfishness, tell me the 4 and 4. Selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. All right, what's the solutions? To immediately ask God to remove these thoughts. Because I can't get rid of my thoughts. So the power of step 1 is ask God to remove these thoughts from me. 2, tell them myself. Call someone and tell them myself. 3rd one, if I've harmed someone, to make immediate amends. And if all of those 3 things fail, the last and most certain thing that will always work is to turn my thoughts to someone that I can help. Because then I stop thinking about me.
Exactly. It always happens. I mean, without even thinking like that, I'm very lucky that I am in this profession, besides doing the podcast and the website and being an entrepreneur. But, obviously I have bazillion problems. Some that I create myself and some real problems. And I often get obsessed about them, like, oh, what's going to happen, whatever, yada, yada, yada. My brain doesn't stop. The minute either the phone rings, so that like a client needs something, or something, or an email comes, hey, my husband needs help, it disappears. All these worries about myself suddenly shifts into a place that, oh, I can help someone. That's the best way to get rid of all these, like, the brain not stop talking to you.
It is. I mean, life goes on, right? We're going to experience ups and downs, and I have the tools today. That 10th step is definitely a tool. One of the tools that really helps me is I don't really do the 10th step at the end of the day. I do it throughout the whole day. Especially in the past, when I first came to Turkey, the call to prayer was something that really disturbed me. I was like, I'd be teaching or doing something and then, and I'd be like, really, right now? Right? But now, I had to talk to my sponsor about it. It was like, sometimes I think I'm just really slow. My idea. He said, well, why don't you, whenever you hear that, turn your thoughts to God and like do like a 10th step stop and check.
Oh, nice.
So, which is exactly what the call to prayer is meant for to begin with, right? But I'm a little slow. So I said, that's a great idea. So now when I hear that call to prayer, it's like, is everything okay? Yeah, everything's good. Thanks, buddy. If things are not going well, I'm stressed or I'm getting worked up, intense or something, then it's like, please help me out here. I'm in self-will. I need to get God's will. What's your will for me? What is it that you want me to do? Which is always the case for the steps, putting my higher power into the picture. Where's the selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear?
It's interesting that, many people know, I don't know if you do or not, but I'm very much involved in this biohacking world. There's a lot of machines, supplements, all type of interventions. But there's an interesting shift into spirituality. There's a huge push saying like, what? That's actually main and the most important part. If you don't practice spirituality, then, this whole trial of living long, whatever, you're going to be a miserable person. You have to be in peace with yourself and with others as well. So let's do the 11 and 12.
11 is very simple for me. When I wake up in the morning, the first thing I do is I have 2 daily meditation books that I read. Then I pray. I pray, say, God, show me what you want me to do today. Help me out. Show me how I can be a maximum service to others. And that's it for the 11th step. And throughout the day, I like the call to prayer stuff, the 10th step, stop and check. It's just try and see the higher power in you. I love being with like-minded people. Fortifies, it builds up my own sense of belonging.
And 12 is the helping others, basically.
And 12 is helping others.
Kevin, isn't it? We can apply most of these steps to a normal daily life. You don't need to be an alcoholic or a drug addict.
Absolutely
it's just like
not.
These are the fundamental expectations from humanity. I consider myself actually very lucky that I ended up being an alcoholic and a drug addict, because I would never, ever, ever would find this new journey. I would be stuck in my own dilemmas, this, that, and the other, and I wouldn't know at least where to go when I'm really struggling or when I'm stuck and when I feel desperate.
It's amazing how many normal people you see, and you're like, they could really use the steps.
So what's your last message to people who are struggling? Let's close it with that.
I think in Turkey, it's just the general idea, like if I have to go to meetings all my life, it's just for today. Every day, it's been over 22 years now, and, it's just for today. Today, I like who I am because of the things that I do, not because of my thinking. It's because of the things that I do that I like myself today. In order to do that, I go to meetings, I help others, and if you do the same, it will work for you too. So don't think of it as, oh, the rest of my life. It's just for today. Do it today. Let your higher power work in your life. See, I turned it over. I'm not in the driver's seat anymore. Now someone else is driving. My higher power is driving. And that makes life easy and worth living. I think that's the key. It's worth living today. It's not about, oh, I got to get the new iPhone, or it's not about instant gratification with things. It's being gratified with my life, and just living the way that I do.
Thank you, Kevin, for sharing your experience, strength, and hope. And, this episode is going to be a very important one because we are here, you and I, showing people, guiding people how to live sober. And it's not that scary, Thank you very much for coming.
You're welcome. Thanks for inviting me.